Will these 2026 movies flop or succeed at the box office? First up is The Mandalorian and Grogu, which might be one of the hardest movies to predict next year because I feel like this is either going to blow away everybody's expectations and be a huge hit or absolutely bomb at the box office. Now, this movie does come out in May, and it's kind of getting ahead of a lot of the crazy competition that's in June and July, so I think that does give it a little bit of a boost, kind of kicking off the summer blockbuster season. But the thing is, the trailer for this honestly looks incredibly lame and mediocre. I think they're making a big mistake not selling this as like a big finale for The Mandalorian and Grogu, but that's probably because they don't want this to end. They're hoping this movie makes a lot of money, and then they can continue milking this for either another season or just continue making more movies. But even though it's incredibly easy to be very skeptical about The Mandalorian and Grogu, I feel like we have to remember The Mandalorian is one of the most popular TV shows of the last couple of years. Even though season 3 was a dip in quality, it was still very popular. Grogu has become one of the most famous Star Wars characters of all time, and the lowest grossing Star Wars movie ever is Solo, that made $392 million. Pretty much every other film has been a success financially. Now remember, these are not predictions on if the movie is going to be good or not, but I'm starting to lean towards this movie being a pretty decent success. I could see it making around $700 to $800 million. I don't think it's going to be a billion-dollar film, but a Star Wars film being back in theaters off of one of the most popular TV shows of the last couple of years. You got Pedro Pascal's going to go around doing these press tours. I think it is going to end up being a success. In March, Pixar has a new movie coming out, and it's called Hoppers. If you don't know, it's literally basically Avatar, where a human is putting their consciousness into an animal and kind of controlling this beaver walking around in the wilderness. Now, Pixar movies have obviously been making a ton of money in the last couple of years, but most of those big movies for them have been their sequels. Like Inside Out 2, for example, became one of the highest grossing animated films of all time until Zootopia 2 just took that title. This film doesn't really have any competition until April, a month later, when the Super Mario Galaxy film comes out, but I honestly still think this is going to be a flop. Like, we've just seen the audience trend lately, especially with kids movies. They do not go and see these original Pixar and Disney movies like they used to. Like Elio from last year, perfect example. A lot of people that went and saw it really liked the film, but it completely bombed at the box office. I'm sure this is going to follow the same formula. Like, families or kids are not going to want to go out and see this. It's going to come out on Disney Plus a few months later, and it's going to be like the #1 most streamed movie when it does. Now, moving on, let's go to Avengers Doomsday, which is very easy to say it's going to succeed and make money. So for some of these super easy successes, I'm also going to predict how much I think these films are going to make and try to get as close as possible to the actual number. Now that the marketing has actually started for this movie, and I've seen how many views these new trailers are putting out every single week are getting, like their X-Men trailer and Captain America ones in particular went absolutely nuclear on social media, just hundreds of millions of views. Yes, it's nostalgia bait, bringing back all these old characters and Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, Captain America, the X-Men, but it's going to work. Anybody that's a fan of any of these Marvel characters is going to go and see this film. It's releasing on December 18th, a week before Christmas. It's going to get all those crazy holiday legs and make a ton of money. And again, people love nostalgia. Deadpool and Wolverine was R-rated, brought back some of the random X-Men characters, and made $1.3 billion. As long as Doomsday is not complete garbage, I think it's going to pull in very similar numbers to Avengers Infinity War. I think it could make $2 billion, at least 1.9, if not even more. But I think $2 billion is going to be my final guess. Let's keep it on the superhero theme for a second and talk about Supergirl, because honestly, I'm starting to get really worried about this film at the box office. Like, the first teaser trailer pulled in a decent amount of views and stuff like that, but we've seen time and time again, trailer views do not correlate to box office numbers at all. And while I enjoy the trailer, I'm not going to lie, the official trailer that comes out, because all we've seen is the teaser so far, it needs to be a lot better, because there's really nothing that moves the needle in it that's going to make people be like, oh my god, I have to go and see this movie. It just looks like every other superhero movie in the last 10 years. And like I said, I am personally excited for this movie. I think it's going to be great, but we have to remember, yes, Superman was a success at the box office. It brought in $600 million worldwide. It was huge on different rental platforms and HBO Max when it became a streaming option, but this is not like an insane nuclear level movie. Like, I think it's a guarantee to say that Supergirl is going to make less than Superman did, which really raises the question of how much is this really going to make? I think $500 million is the absolute top level amount that this movie can make, especially in June with a lot of other competition, and I honestly see this thing landing a little bit closer to like $300 to $400 million and falling in the flop category. That doesn't mean it might just barely break even at the box office, but I think it's going to go in the flop category because I honestly really see this thing underperforming and just barely breaking a profit, if at all. Super Mario Galaxy is another one of those incredibly easy ones that is going to go in the success categories, but let's talk about how much exactly I think it's going to make. The first Super Mario Bros. Movie made $1.3 billion 2 years ago, and this movie's releasing pretty much around the same exact time of the year. Again, there's really no competition for kids' movies around this time besides Hoppers that comes out a year before. I don't think that's going to affect it at all. But most importantly, the reception to the first film was very positive, and a lot of people checked it out on streaming for the first time after it left theaters. I think this is going to get a big boost, and I could see it making $1.5 billion at the box office. The Odyssey has been heavily debated about how this film is going to do at the box office. There's people saying this is going to super flop, and Christopher Nolan's a fraud. There's others that are saying it's a clear lock for $1 billion. I don't think either of those scenarios are true. But what is true is that The Odyssey is one of the most famous and recognizable stories of all time. The movie's being made by one of the most famous and recognizable directors of our current day. Like, no other director is selling a movie like Christopher Nolan's name is right now. The cast is absolutely insane. They've been marketing this movie since this summer, having teaser trailers in theaters. They put the prologue in front of Avatar. There's the official trailer out there now. It has double the views of what Oppenheimer has, and I do think this movie is more accessible to a lot more people than Oppenheimer was. Now, that movie just made under $1 billion, and it was obviously helped by Barbenheimer. But like I said, while this movie doesn't have Barbenheimer to hype it up, I think it doesn't really need it because the story is just going to have more mass appeal, and I think this is going to be a huge success, and I wouldn't be surprised if it makes $1 billion, but I think like 8 to 900 million is a lot. Now let's talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day, because spoiler alert, this is going in the success category, but how much this movie's going to make is honestly a very hot topic, because Spider-Man No Way Home made a $1.9 billion, but that movie was really a once-in-a-lifetime event on its own. Like, the hype and theories leading up to that film releasing with, oh my god, are Toby and Andrew going to be back, was crazy. But I don't think this movie is going to make anywhere near as much money as Spider-Man No Way Home, even though it's going to be a huge success and probably clear $1 billion. Like, I think I'm going to put this around $1.2 to $1.3 billion for my projections, because again, Spider-Man is incredibly famous. This is the last Marvel movie coming out before Doomsday. That's going to give it a little bit of a boost, and I think it is going to be a really good film. So it's going to be a success, but I think setting expectations towards Spider-Man No Way Home numbers is just doing this movie a disservice. Now, if you want to talk about a movie that is probably going to be one of the biggest flops of all time, that is the new Masters of the Universe movie coming out this year, because it has a budget of over $200 million. So with a budget of $200 million, assuming they have a fair amount of marketing and other costs, this would need to make it at least around $500 million to really be making money. Look at this cast and tell me with a straight face that this is going to be a box office success. Nobody in the world cares about Masters of the Universe right now, or He-Man. They have Jared Leto, the ultimate box office poison in this film, like Alison Brie, Idris Elba, Kristen Wiig. I like those different actors, but they are not selling this film. Really have no idea what they are thinking there. It just shows studios are incredibly desperate to find any franchise at this point, but spending this much money on this movie is just crazy. Dune Part 3 is another highly debated movie, because yes, this is one of my most anticipated films of all time, and I think my most anticipated movie of 2026. It's right up there with The Odyssey. But if you don't know, the source material it's adapting in the book Dune Messiah is very different than the first two Dune films, and a lot of people are assuming it's not going to really be a crowd pleaser because the tone's going to be a lot different. There's barely any action in the book it's adapting. But Dune Part 2 was a huge success. The movie made $714 million worldwide. It's one of the highest rated films amongst both users and critics on pretty much any platform out there. And I feel like this gave the movie enough of a core audience that are going to go and check out Dune Part 3. And I feel like people are kind of underestimating, like, yeah, Denis Villeneuve obviously knows that the book he's adapting is not as much of like blockbuster material. So I think he's going to kind of change it. No real spoiler territories, but I think we're going to see more of stuff that happens in between the time jump in the book. Like, he could so easily add in a little bit of stuff in here that wouldn't ruin the source material, but would also make it a little bit more of your typical sci-fi like blockbuster action film. Now, the real question is, how much money can this movie make compared to Avengers Doomsday, because they're releasing on the same day, and Doomsday, like I said, is pretty much a lock for over $1 billion and pretty close to $2 billion. Is this movie going to get absolutely overshadowed by Avengers Doomsday? Since they have a similar target audience, it's not like Barbenheimer, where it's like two different types of groups of people wanting to see both films. But I think it can work. I think Avengers Doomsday can become a thing. People going to see these double features. They do have all the IMAX screens in December, so I think that's why they're not going to move their release date, and I think it's going to still be a success. I don't know if it's going to make more than Dune Part 2, but I could see it making similar to the same numbers, like 700 million. We're getting a new Wuthering Heights movie that looks like it's just going all in on the insane amount of romance in this. Like, it doesn't look very faithful to the book, but I think this is going to be a crowd pleaser. It's targeting women. Obviously, we've seen movies that are for women do very well at the box office, even though studios rarely make them. Like, they've got their heartthrob actors in this movie with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. The Valentine's release day, it's a pretty cheap budget from what we know. This is going to be a pretty moderate success. Toy Story 5 is another one of those movies that falls into the very easy success category, but the question is how much will this actually make? It's releasing in June, kind of again kicking off that summer blockbuster season with other films like Mandalorian and Grogu and Supergirl. But I think this will pretty easily make the most out of any of those. Like every single Toy Story movie just keeps making more and more money. The last two made just over $1 billion. And besides Lightyear, that was a complete flop, I think this is going to be absolutely massive still. And Toy Story is really one of those franchises that just has a super locked in audience. Like you've got new kids growing up with these films now that are going to want to go and see Toy Story 5, but also the people that were originally kids when the first Toy Story came out are now adults and probably have their own families and are going to take them and go and see it. I think this is going to get very close to $1 billion. I'm going to give it like a 950 million though, just because there is a lot of competition in this summer. I don't think it's going to crack quite 1 billion, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. And a huge reason for that is another massive franchise. Minions 3 is still reportedly coming out this year. There's been no trailers or teasers or anything, but it's scheduled for July as of right now, like a couple weeks after Toy Story 5. And I mean, this is just another absolute money glitch of a franchise. Despicable Me 4 from a couple years ago made like over $900 million. The last Minions movie made over $900 million. Multiple have made billions of dollars in this franchise. It is an absolute money glitch. Kids love the Minions. Now, for my exact prediction, I think this is also going to come in under $1 billion. I think this is going to hit like $850 to $900 million. And the reason why, again, is because there's so many movies coming out in June and July. We saw this last year. Like everybody was like, oh my God, Supergirl, Jurassic World, and Fantastic Four, they're all going to be huge billion-dollar films. But then they all kind of like end up hurting each other and have all lower finishes than what we really expected. I think we're going to see something similar this year, but this is obviously going to be a success. Maggie Gyllenhaal, yes, the sister of Jake Gyllenhaal, is directing The Bride, obviously about Frankenstein's Bride. It comes out on March 6th next year. Some counter programming with this and Hoppers, I guess, happening. I genuinely would be shocked if this is not one of the biggest bombs of the year. Now, we have no idea how big the budget is, but we know it's a pretty moderate sized one, and they have some pretty big stars in this, like Christian Bale. But I'm going to be honest, the trailers for this thing do not look good whatsoever. I have no idea who the intended audience of this thing is. Like, it doesn't really seem like it's going for that romance niche exactly, because I feel like that's going to be taken by Wuthering Heights. It comes out a few weeks earlier. It's not really for the horror crowd. Like, there's some really odd humor in the trailer that, again, doesn't really look appealing to me. And I don't want to say like, oh, I don't think I'm going to like this movie, so it's just going to flop because of that. But I don't know who this movie's for at all, so I think it's going to be a pretty big flop next year. Let's move on, getting back to the superhero genre, but with a different type of film, because we know the Clayface film is releasing on September 11th of next year. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest successes of the year based on how cheap the budget is, because they're only making this film for around $40 million using lots of different practical effects, and it's targeting the R-rated horror genre. Horror movies on their own are an absolute money glitch. Like the new Conjuring movie that came out in September this year made $500 million or something crazy like that. And I feel like this is going to be one of those movies that kind of gets past the DC fandom and just into the general horror audience. So we got to hope that Supergirl's a good movie, even if it slightly underperforms, because that movie is going to be obviously more expensive in the $100 to $150 million to make range. But if it's good and the DC word of mouth continues to spread, plus it's just being an interesting looking horror movie, it's a lot to make a pretty decent amount of money. If you asked me last year, I would have said The Devil Wears Prada 2 was a guaranteed flop. I'm like, oh my God, this is a legacy sequel coming out so many years after the first one. But I learned my lesson last year. I said Freakier Friday was going to flop at the box office. Not only did it not flop at the box office, it also went on and became like the biggest film on Disney Plus. It was really a huge film last year. So I've learned, yeah, do not doubt Disney making a legacy sequel to films that have a huge cult following and very big name stars attached to it. Like they're bringing back the same actors for this one. It is going to be another success. Again, that doesn't mean it's going to be like a $500-600 million film, but it's probably going to make at least $300 million on a pretty cheap budget. Now let's get back to another super easy success. This is another question of will it make $1 billion or not, and that is the Michael Jackson biopic coming out next year. Again, this is coming out in April, I believe. Not really any direct competition. Like Super Mario Galaxy has a completely different audience in this type of film, and Michael Jackson is one of, if not the most famous person that's ever lived. Celebrity-wise, obviously, I'm talking, relax with your comments. Now, the thing is, no musical biopic has made more than $900 million, and that was Bohemian Rhapsody. Besides that, the numbers are very low. Like, these are still successful based on their budget, but it is not typical for a musical biopic to make close to $1 billion. But if one's going to do it, I think it's going to be Michael Jackson, and I honestly think it can do it and crack $1 billion. I think the only thing that would really hurt this is it being a part one, because if you don't know, yeah, there is a part two that's scheduled to come out maybe late 2026 or 2027. We don't know when that next one is coming out, but they're very smartly not marketing this as a part one film, just like Wicked did and Dune. People are going to go in, not know it's half the story, and it's going to make an insane amount of money. Project Hail Mary is the newest sci-fi film with Ryan Gosling. This is coming from Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the producers of the Spider-Verse films. I absolutely love the Project Hail Mary book. It's really funny, has some really sweet moments, and I think the trailer for this does look very good. Again, we have to see how much can a movie like this that's like original but based on a book, obviously, make in the modern box office climate, because it just doesn't seem like a thing that is a cash cow anymore. Like The Martian is a similar comparison. That movie made $630 million, and it's actually based on a book by the same author as Project Hail Mary, starring Matt Damon. Very comparable in a lot of ways, but the box office climate has changed so much that now if you're not a big franchise or IP film or based on a famous person, I don't think you're making that amount of money back. I think it's going to heavily rely on word of mouth. This film has to be like amazing. I'm talking like that 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, just universal praise across the board to have any chance, but sadly I'm going to put it in flop, although it is one of my most anticipated movies of the next year. Scream 7 is a very difficult one to predict because there's obviously lots of drama going on around this movie. There's people saying that they're going to boycott the film, which honestly I am not against them doing that at all. Because yeah, if you're unaware, because Melissa Barrera just spoke out for what she believed in and she was right, she got fired by Paramount, and then Jenna Ortega left the project to like be like, oh yeah, I support my friend Melissa, I'm gonna leave this movie too. So now Scream has lost its two big stars attached to this franchise. But like I said, horror movies are kind of a money glitch at the box office. Like the last Scream made $166 million worldwide and it had a budget of around $40 million. We have to assume this next one is around the same budget or cheaper. Now, for being honest, the sad reality is 99% of the regular audience do not know about anything. They're not going to hear about the boycott and they're not going to care. They're still going to go and see this movie. But I think what will really affect it is the fact that the two main stars and characters from the previous films in this franchise are no longer in it. So like I said, horror movies are kind of guaranteed to be profitable if their budget's even semi-reasonable. I do think this is going to be profitable, but I'm putting it in the flop category because I do think it's going to be the worst performing Scream movie of the modern times. We're getting another new Hunger Games movie, The Sunrise on the Reaping prequel. I believe this is following like Haymitch when he's a kid. I don't know. I'm not that invested in the Hunger Games story, so I have no idea what's going on there. Now, back in 2023, another one of Suzanne Collins' prequel Hunger Games books made $347 million worldwide on a budget of $100 million, which clearly was enough for them to greenlight another prequel. Plus, this one does have a pretty star-studded cast. It's releasing right around Thanksgiving of this year, and we've seen there's always huge films around Thanksgiving. I think this is going to be another successful film and succeed. And it already feels like there's more hype for this one based on the trailer and stuff than the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, so I think this one could cap out around like $400 million compared to this one that made $350. We're getting a new Tom Cruise comedy drama movie coming out this year from the director of Birdman and stuff that looks honestly really good, but this movie has a budget of $120 million. I think this is going to be a cult hit with people that love cinema and it's going to be very highly rated. The trailer does look very interesting and stunning visually, but I just do not think we are in the times where this movie is going to make that much money. And like even Tom Cruise's last Mission Impossible film kind of underperformed. I don't think he's quite the box office magic everybody makes him out to be, but I do respect for what he's doing for cinema and how much he cares about theaters. Sadly, this is a flop though. 2026 is also the year we get a new Steven Spielberg movie. If you're unaware, it's called Disclosure Day. It's another kind of like alien UFO movie starring Emily Blunt. The first trailer looks pretty interesting. Again, nothing absolutely mind-blowing, but I think this movie, again, releasing in June, tons of heavy competition. Spielberg, obviously one of the famous and best directors of all time, but in the year 2026, how much is his name really going to sell? Besides the fact that the budget's over $100 million, we don't know the exact number yet, but I sadly don't see this film breaking out and being a huge success. It will probably land right around like $300 to $350 million worldwide, again, unless it has like insane word of mouth, and sadly be a flop, but again, I hope it's really good. If you made it this far, drop a like in the video, let me know in the comments what you think is going to be the biggest success and flop of the year in the comments below. And if you want to see my predictions that I made a year ago about what movies will flop or succeed next year in 2027, click the video above my head, and thank you so much for watching.